So I'm Sarah Wells. I am an independent consultant and author. I've been working in technology for 25 years. My last full-time job was at the Financial Times business newspaper in London, where I was a technical director. We went through a big digital transformation during the decade that I was there. I've recently finished writing a book about microservices, and it's called Enabling Microservice Success. And when I started to write that, I thought, well, what does success mean? And I think that you can focus very much narrowly on, does the architecture work the way you expect? But actually there are other aspects that are quite important. So for example, does it allow you to build a system that you can support in production? Does it stop you from having to start again in a couple of years' time? And probably most important for me, does it help you to deliver your business goals? So I think every architectural decision should be about, does this make my business more likely to succeed? Which is generally about being able to deliver the features and products you need effectively and quickly. So there's quite a lot of research that says the more that you have to wait for someone else or hand over to someone else, the more it slows you down. It's one of the things that brought about the DevOps movement, was the idea that you don't want to hand over from dev to ops to get into production. I think fast flow, the idea that you want a stream of small changes going live all the time, and gives you the chance to try things out in small increments, get quick feedback from it. And that is pretty fundamental to me for being able to deliver effective software development that makes sense for your business. Once you've gone beyond, are you actually delivering business value? Can you quickly work out when something's gone wrong in production? Because you're only successful if your software is running successfully. So can you diagnose that there have been problems and fix it? I used to run an operations team. This is something that's quite close to my heart. I think you want to be able to keep everything in good condition. So you want it to be not that difficult to maintain and upgrade and look after your software estate. And you want your developers to be able to focus on the interesting stuff. So I've also done quite a lot of work in platform engineering. So how can you have the foundations that allow all of your software development teams to make progress because they've got common components and support that lets them focus on the business aspects? Flow is the idea that you're not being held up. So can you work autonomously? Without handoffs to another team? Can you build, deploy and run your software just yourself as a team? So what you want is to be able to discuss the idea of a new feature that you need to build, to design it, code it and push it live without having to wait for anyone else to offer you, to sign something off. So a flow of value, so small changes repeatedly released. So there are two, I think, main challenges. The first challenge is we've got to the point now where microservice architectures are ubiquitous and people think, well, this is the way that we should do stuff. But it has to solve a problem that you actually have. If you're a small team, say you're in a startup, you don't need to split out different services to be able to make progress. So you need to have a problem. Normally they're a solution to an organizational scaling problem. You've got multiple teams trying to do work in the same area, and if you can split that up into different services, they can work independent. The second problem is there are actually quite a lot of changes that come with it. If your culture can't support giving people autonomy, if your organizational structure doesn't allow teams to make progress, then you will struggle with it. And if you've got a lot of processes in place that require you to go and, for example, go to a meeting to decide that you're going to release code to production, you're not going to get the benefits of microservices. You're just going to struggle with, it's a distributed system, it's more complicated to run, and you're not getting the flow that would make that worth doing. Well, there's some research that Ron Westrom did about organizational cultures where he talks about 3 different types of culture. You've got a pathological culture where no one trusts each other. You have a bureaucratic culture where everything has to go up via your managers and they're back down. And you have a generative culture that's really focused on a flow of information. You're looking for a culture where everyone values learning, where people can make decisions and tell other people about that decision without having to go and get it signed off. So I think it's worth looking at Westrom's research and seeing generative culture, because that's a really good indicator of a software organization that can make progress. You don't really have autonomy if you don't feel safe to make a decision. You have to feel safe to say, I'm going to use this technology or I'm going to solve the problem in this way. And if you don't, you can't make progress. So I see organizations where there is a level of fear of making a mistake where it stops you from doing your best work. You see this often with production incidents. So if you have a culture where something goes wrong in production and the first instinct is to say who did this and who is to blame, people won't tell you that something's gone wrong. Whereas if you have a culture where the first instinct is to work out how to fix it, and then the next is to talk about what led to that and try and make improvements with the context that no one deliberately makes mistakes, you have a much more productive response to production incidents. It's in general, you want to be able to do your work without worrying that it's going to have consequences. You have to trust that you can be yourself at work, I think. Diversity of a team can help. I think diversity helps generally. It just means that you have a lot more viewpoints. Culture change is difficult, and it generally means you need to have people in leadership positions that see the value of that kind of change. You have to be quite intentional about it, because it's hard to convince people that now it's okay to speak up about something. They have to see it happen. But you can make that change, I think, quite quickly if you're very conscious about, for example, making sure there's no blame when something goes wrong, and showing through your actions. There's an idea that like your culture is how you act, how you behave. So you have to have it back up what you say, because if you're an organization that says, oh yeah, we don't blame, and then the first time something goes wrong, someone gets blamed, people won't trust you. So I'm a real fan of having a learning culture. It's part of that generative culture I was just talking about. I saw this happening at the Financial Times. We ran an internal tech conference for the last 7 years before I left. I was part of the organising group for that. It helped teams to understand that other teams were doing their best in the context of their challenges, because there's a tendency to think, well, if this team is moving slow, then they just mustn't know what they're doing. But there might be a lot of other things, legacy that they're looking after. So internal tech conferences for us was an opportunity to understand more about the constraints on other teams and to learn from the things they'd done. And we also did tech talks. We used to have lunchtime tech talks that people would come to. We really encouraged people to go out and speak at conferences, because you build a network and you understand your topic a lot better as a result of doing that. I think that all of these things really help to bond people together and to give you a much better chance of being successful. You don't make a mistake if you can learn from some other company's experience. You don't want to only learn from the things that went wrong in your company. The first step of being able to move a company towards moving with flow is to understand what you're trying to achieve. And there are some great books. So the Accelerate book talks about what it takes to be an effective software technology organization. It talks a lot about the flow of value and the flow of feedback. It's not a very long book. It's really worth reading. Team Topologies is another book that I would recommend. It talks about how different teams can be structured to optimize for flow. So there's a lot of things that a software development team has to know. There's a high cognitive load, stuff that you have to keep in your head. That can be a bit overwhelming. You can end up constantly changing to a new thing, and you're context switching, and it slows you down. So trying to work out how can I have other teams that support my product development teams to make progress can be very effective in speeding up flow. And the Accelerate book has this concept of 4 key metrics, often called the DORA metrics. They're a really good target if you're not managing to do small releases and release them frequently. You can start measuring those and you can take actions and see whether they have an impact on those metrics. So I'm really enjoying the conference. I really like the focus on architecture, and there's a lot of stuff here about how Gen AI and AI is going to affect people. The impact it has on roles is something that I haven't seen people discussing as much as I have here. It's the talks, the level of the talks is really interesting. There's a lot of depth in most of the talks that I've been to, and I can go away with things where I'm thinking, I should probably read up more on that.